All right, let's take another deep dive. And this time we're looking at international diplomacy. And we've got a story about a very important meeting in the Oval Office between two presidents, some very, very different personalities, and a really controversial peace plan that could honestly completely change what's happening at a big conflict right now.
Yeah, I think what we're really looking at here is personalities and how much they can affect big world events. It's easy to think about, all the policies and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's still people making decisions, and how they see each other really, really matters.
I think you're right. And that's what makes this story so interesting.
Yeah.
We're getting a behind the scenes look at this meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky. And, things start okay, but they go downhill really fast.
Yeah, there's a real change in the room. President Trump is friendly at first toward President Zelensky, but then there are these moments where it seems like Zelensky's poking at him, saying things that just aren't true and being disrespectful.
Yeah, like someone's trying to mess up the diplomacy on purpose. And then it gets even worse because a Polish journalist asks a question and the whole thing goes off the rails. There's this really tense back and forth, almost like a fight between Zelensky and one of the American officials.
And this is where you see how their personalities are really clashing. You can feel the frustration on both sides. Zelensky seems to think he deserves special treatment, and there's just no respect. The communication totally breaks down.
But even with all this tension, President Trump still wants to keep talking, and he wants to do it in public.
Yeah.
It's like he wants everyone to see what's happening.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about how much of diplomacy should be secret and how much should be public. It's a tough balance to get right.
Yeah, for sure. But even with all this going on, President Trump's main goal never changes. He wants the fighting to stop, and he wants a peaceful solution.
And that's important to remember. President Trump always says he wants to end the fighting and get a deal. It's a really important part of how he sees things in the world.
And then he makes this big offer, a mineral deal that he thinks could be a big step toward peace.
This mineral deal is really interesting. President Trump saw it as a way to show that America was serious about the country in conflict, not just giving them weapons, but actually investing in their future and showing we care about them being independent.
Yeah, it's like saying, hey, we're here for the long haul, not just when things are tough.
Right. The mineral deal was supposed to be just the beginning, then a ceasefire, and then finally sitting down with President Putin and working out a real peace agreement.
So like a step-by-step plan to make things better.
Exactly. And there's another really important point. President Trump has said many times that Putin is ready to talk about peace, so there's a chance to stop fighting and start talking.
But there's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Zelensky doesn't seem to want peace at all.
Yeah, that's the big issue. While all the European leaders are publicly supporting Zelensky in private, they're saying this can't go on forever. So there's this big difference between what they say and what they actually think. Like, everyone knows it has to end, but no one wants to say it out loud.
Exactly. And what's crazy is that even though the Biden administration spent tons of money and talked tough, the fighting still kept going. Just giving them weapons and hoping for the best clearly didn't work.
Yeah. It seems like they're just trying to fix things by throwing money at the problem without a real plan.
Yeah, and that shows the difference between Biden and President Trump. You see, Trump says he's the only one with a real plan for peace. One that means talking to Putin, investing in the country in a smart way, and taking things one step at a time.
So it's more than just giving them weapons. It's about setting them up so they can be successful in the long run.
Exactly. The idea is that the best way to keep them safe isn't just giving them guns. It's about helping their economy grow and showing that America is going to be there for them. And this is where Zelensky's refusal to even think about peace really stands out.
It seems so strange. You'd think the guy who supposedly has a connection with Putin, the guy Putin himself has said he'd talk to, would be the one pushing for peace the hardest. It doesn't make a lot of sense, this idea that just talking to Putin is some kind of betrayal. It's not only a bad idea, it could be really dangerous. Diplomacy means talking even to people you really disagree with.
It makes you wonder what the people pushing that idea are really after. Are they actually trying to find a solution that works for everyone, or are they just trying to score political points?
Yeah, it's a good question. Are they really committed to ending the fighting, or do they just want to keep it going as long as it helps them politically?
That's a pretty cynical view, but when the stakes are this high, you can't just ignore that possibility.
Absolutely. And to be clear, no one's saying we should just let Putin do whatever he wants. It's about looking at the situation honestly and understanding that diplomacy means talking to people, even if you have a bad history with them and don't trust them.
It's about finding some kind of middle ground, even when it feels impossible.
Right. And that might mean making hard choices, compromises that not everyone will like, But the goal has to be to stop the violence and figure out how to rebuild and get people back together.
It's like walking a tightrope. You're trying to keep everyone happy and find a way forward that hurts the fewest people and gives peace the best chance.
And that takes real leadership. Someone who's not afraid to take risks, challenge the usual way of thinking, and put the people hurt by the conflict first, instead of playing politics.
So what does all this mean for the conflict? What's going to happen?
If Zelensky keeps refusing to even talk about peace, things are going to be bad. The fighting could go on for years and make the whole region really unstable.
And the longer it goes on, the harder it'll be to find a solution that makes everyone happy.
The chance for a deal might be going away, and doing nothing could have terrible consequences.
That's scary to think about. And it makes President Trump's work to get everyone to the table even more important. He seems to get how urgent this is, how important it is to do something before it's too late.
Yeah, he's not afraid to speak his mind and be direct, challenging both sides to give up something and think about the bigger picture.
It's a bold move, and no one knows if it'll work. But one thing's for sure, doing nothing isn't an option.
Things have to change, and it might take a leader like President Trump, someone who's willing to do things differently, to finally end the violence and stop the fighting.
This is still developing, and we'll be watching closely. What we're seeing here is how fragile peace is, how complicated diplomacy is, and how much responsibility leaders have in times like these.
This whole situation makes us really think about the choices our leaders make and what those choices mean for the world. But there's something else to consider. The mineral deal itself. It wasn't just about money. It was about showing a real long-term commitment to the country in conflict, a commitment Zelensky seems to want nothing to do with.
It's like he's throwing away a chance to make things better. Why would he do that?
Well, some people think Zelensky thinks he can actually win the war completely, even though it doesn't look good for him right now. Maybe he's not seeing the situation clearly, or maybe people in his government are pressuring him to be tough, or maybe he honestly thinks he can't compromise at all.
So he's taking a huge risk, hoping for a big win, even if it means the fighting keeps going.
Exactly. And here's another thing to consider: pressure from other countries. Zelensky might be getting pressured by other countries who want the conflict to keep going, maybe for political reasons, or maybe because they're making money off of it.
So he's stuck between a rock and a hard place, with everyone pulling him in different directions.
Exactly. And that makes it incredibly hard for him to make decisions. He's got all these people with different agendas telling him what to do.
And what does this mean for the people actually caught in the middle of this war?
Sadly, more fighting just means more suffering, more people losing their homes, more lives lost. The longer this goes on, the harder it'll be to rebuild and heal the damage.
It's just heartbreaking, and it shows how important finding peace is.
Absolutely. And that's why President Trump's work is so important. He gets how urgent this is. He knows they need to stop the fighting before it's too late.
He's not scared to shake things up, try a new way, even if it means going against everyone else.
Yeah, his willingness to talk directly to Putin, offer them economic benefits, suggest a step-by-step plan to calm things down. These are all signs that he's thinking outside the box, trying to find a solution that others have missed.
It's a risky strategy for sure, but it also gives us some hope.
And that's what we need right now. Hope that they can find a way to end this and that peace will win in the end.
Well, this has been a really interesting deep dive. We've seen how complicated diplomacy can be and how hard it is to get peace in a world that's this messed up.
Yeah, we've talked about how different these two leaders are, the peace plan that no one can agree on, and all the political pressure that's making everything even harder.
It leaves us with some big questions to think about. What does real diplomacy look like in the world today? How do we balance what everyone wants and actually build a peace that lasts?
These are questions we all need to think about. We need to be critical, and we need to get involved, because finding peace is something we all have to work on together.
Subscribe to our podcast, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We are here to make things clear, new episodes every day.